Hello and welcome to Dot, the podcast that connects the dots on how to be you with me, Fiona Murden, psychologist and author. Today I am joined by Hannah Roberts, who is someone I've known virtually for a while, but met in person for the first time recently, which was fantastic because I've always felt a connection with you, Hannah, and it was just really lovely to sit and chat in person. There's just something different about it, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a huge fan of meeting people in person. As probably my friends and family will tell you, I'm sometimes a little bit not great at texting, but I love meeting up with people, and I always will take that option over the internet any time possible. Obviously, that's not always possible.
Yeah, and I guess on the positive is I wouldn't have met you if it wasn't for the internet properly.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Tell people a bit about you. You've got a massively interesting background, unique in many ways, and you've experienced a huge amount in a short period of time.
Yeah.
So you left school at 18, like everyone else does.
Yes.
But your choice then was not to go down the stereotypical route. What did you do?
Yeah, so well, I left sort of secondary school at 16, like everybody does. And at the time, I didn't feel academically strong. My GCSEs were really challenging for me. I passed the majority of them, but it was still a huge challenge. And I thought A levels would just be too much for me. Didn't believe in myself, so I went to college and did a MBQ. I think it was in travel and tourism. And yeah, it was the financial recession 2008, and so I knew that sort of travel industry wasn't in a great place, and I was like, well, what am I going to do? I was really keen to move away from home, not because anything was bad about it, but I just really wanted to go out and explore. I also wanted to challenge myself still. So my dad mentioned to me, the military sort of train you, get your qualifications as well as getting paid. And at that time, I was like, winner. And also of all the getting to live away and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, okay. So I went to the careers office and joined up. And 18, I started basic training, and I've sort of served now for 12 years. So I've sort of just joined just as a way of developing and getting away from home, and here I am still 12 years later. So yeah,
it's quite a big decision to make because it's not, well, the way you describe it, it's not something that you were immersed in necessarily growing up or seeing, and so making that decision to switch from something like travel and tourism to being in the military is quite a big step.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose I didn't really give it too much thought. I was just so fixated on earning money, but also developing myself and finding an avenue to do that. And the military was one of them, especially as at the time we were in a recession, and it wasn't just me who had probably similar thinking at the time. There was a massive uptake and people wanted to join the military. And also at that time, there was OPERIC, which was Afghanistan campaigns. And again, maybe just a bit drawn to, wanting to serve and sort of do my bit and things like that. So it all led me to that place. So I suppose having just that inner fire, just to sort of get away from a little town and village and just to go and explore the world. And the military, for me at that time, was that avenue to do that.
Did anything about it scare you or worry you? Can you remember?
No, actually, I think I just was. I think when you join, you sort of know that they're just going to take you on a path. It's very sort of planned out for you, so you just sort of have to turn up and do what they say, and then you'll be okay. And I think that was just in my head, really, that I'll join and they'll take me wherever that career path will take me. And I kind of felt assured, the military is a very, very well-established institution and has been for hundreds of years. And so sort of felt safe, to sort of go away, and that they would, in a way, sort of look after me. And, so yeah. So maybe that's naivety at that age, but it all turned out well. So
You've been to Afghanistan, you've done tours.
yes, I did two op tours of Herrick 19 and the back end of Herrick 20. So yeah, it was I deployed on my 22nd birthday, on my first one, and then I came back and I had sort of, I think it was, I can't remember the specifics, but 6-7 months, and then I went back out again for another tour. So yeah, that was very, very unique, but something that in a weird way I really enjoyed. So and I learned lots, and in many ways it set me up. So yeah, it was a relatively a positive experience, but I like to add on that my jobs were headquarter based. So my first tour was in Camp Bastion, which probably many people have heard of. And so that was a very, the camp was the size of Reading. It was multinational, and relative to being in Afghanistan, it was one of the safest places to be. And then my second tour, I was in Kabul, and I was headquarter based. I did go outside. They call it the wire, meaning the secure camp on road moves. And I used to fly around different locations in Afghanistan, but I was never what you would sort of call frontline, what you maybe saw in a Ross Kemp in Afghanistan, where they're in the fobs and out fighting the enemy. I never did that. So again, my experience is very unique. Everyone has a unique experience of their time in Afghanistan. So please don't base what I'm saying what everyone would have experienced. That was just my personal experience.
But you were still presumably trained to be able to be on the front line should that have come up.
Yes, there was extensive training. So you do what you call pre-deployment training. And that covers all bases and beyond. So you very much in a position where you felt fully trained to do your job, but also go above and beyond. So yes, if there was a chance of kind of coming across the enemy, you would be able to defend yourself and do everything necessary in that moment. So yeah, of course, there's always that possibility, which we're always trained for. Didn't occur in my case, and so yeah, it was unique, but I suppose it's when you do so much training and you do training above what was actually expected of me in any of my deployments, you kind of just think, yeah, it was fine, and everyone else is like, oh, you're in Afghanistan. But I suppose that's what you get from doing lots of arduous training to build you up for sort of unique circumstances. And a lot of the times, and I can actually, I think it's the same in a degree, I don't know about yourself, but you feel like your training is so much harder than the real thing, the real job, or different, and that you set yourself up for the workplace by actually doing above and beyond what's ever necessary. And I think a lot of people can relate that to, even if they've done a course or done a degree or whatever it may be. I think a lot of people would agree the training is usually harder than the actual job itself, and that's what I felt. My training in the army to go on operations, that's precisely what it was. The training was actually harder than the job that I did out there. So,
and a lot of mental and physical training in that respect. It's not a case of just rocking up with.
Absolutely, this was years in the making, and then also they build your stress resilience in very unique ways and actually fun ways. So part of the reason why, if you know someone in the military, they might have told you a story where they've gone off skiing for weeks on end, or they've gone and done some hill walking all in work time. You think, oh my god, like that's amazing. And it is amazing, and it's a great perk. But also the reason why they heavily invest in that for numerous reasons, and a couple of the reasons are, what they do is they put you in what I can, challenging situations in a fun way. So learning how to ski, going hill walking in Scotland, parachuting, and in their moments where it's very controlled and most people perceive as fun, you're actually learning how to control your stress. You're controlling having adrenaline in your system, being really unsure, feeling unsafe. And you have people around you in their moments, your instructors, guiding you through that, and you've also got more experienced people, and you're feeding off them. And in their moments of essentially adventurous training, you're actually building yourself up for potential operations, because if you can handle yourself in moments when you were jumping out of a plane, and trust me, that was far more terrifying than anything I ever felt in Afghanistan, then if the occasion does arise when you're on operations, be whatever that is, then you know how to control your fears, and the more you do that, the better you become at it. And so I did things like that before I joined. You do lots of arduous sort of challenges which are essentially fun, or you've volunteered for it. So I did another one where I did 40 miles or 40 pounds on my back with a team of girls, and I volunteered for it. It was really, really challenging, and I was very young, and it's the most I've ever tested my body. And again, you realize how much, what you're capable of, really, because it wasn't, I never thought, told my young self I'd be able to do that. And you realize you have so much more to give in them sort of situations. And again, that carries you through life, be that if in Afghanistan or just in the gym training in my local town. So yeah, they're very good at training people up and building that stress tolerance. So when you do go into environments that are maybe super stressful, like an operation, then you've got the skill set to do that and the experience, and also to lead in them moments as well.
What I was talking to someone about earlier this week, he's worked a lot with military veterans. And we were talking about different populations, and you won't be surprised, it was around mentoring.
Yeah.
But how in some populations, people's reason for doing it may be for status or for a desire to give back, or all those different motivations that can come into it. But within the veteran community, he said it will nearly all the time be because people want to look after the well-being of the population coming through.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've always got from, I think I told you, my dad was in the RAF, my father-in-law was in the RAF. Different to the army, I appreciate, but a sense of community and a sense of shared understanding and pulling your weight as part of a team.
Absolutely. And you all bounce off one another. So one of the things that you do when you're in training is you go into the woods, and you practice like combat, and you can dig sort of holes to sleep in, and you do lots of defensive stuff. So it's really the nitty-gritty of army training. And what you'll find, and you barely sleep, you don't shower, you don't have a hot meal, and so you're usually cold, wet, and hungry throughout the whole duration. And everyone has their highs and lows, and what you'll notice in a group is one person will be having a low and another person's having the up, and that person will sort of try and bring the team up in a way when someone else is feeling a bit down, or make that person a brew, or something like that. And then that person will, was got a low, and that person was having a low, goes on a high, and everyone kind of just bounces with one another. And it's kind of that camaraderie that you do all around. And then you find, as you get more experience in them environments, you become a leader, and then it's really important to be that person always in the middle. And then again, you're the person having to bring your team up to the middle and keep everyone balanced and motivated. So again, it's them points in the military which really put you under that sort of controlled stress of long periods of time being cold, wet, and hungry, but you just keep going, and you realize actually what you're made of, and what other people are made of, because these are just ordinary people from all walks of life, all genders, religions, backgrounds, and in their moments we've all got a common cause, being that just getting whatever's in front of us accomplished. And you all work towards that, and you all thrive with each other in their moments to sort of get it complete. And it's really, I think, especially now, humans are having relatively a very good existence. yeah, and you really, and I don't think if it wasn't for the military, I would have ever experienced pushing myself and seeing others push themselves to the limit, and then actually finding, oh, I've got more in me. I've got a second wind, a third wind, a fourth wind, a fifth wind, and that's not just physically but mentally as well. And that's something that I very much remember in times where I'm feeling a bit tired mentally or physically, and knowing that I have got more left to give. And I don't think I would have experienced that if it wasn't for the military. Because when I was in training, it was like, well, I don't want to go home. I have to pass. I want to be, a full-time soldier. So trust me, I had moments, and my colleagues had moments where we're just like, what are we doing with our lives? It's like pouring down with rain, and we're sat in a hole, and we've got days on end, and we haven't slept, and it's just, what am I doing with my life? And everyone has that, and then it goes and it passes, and you push on. Before you know it, you've accomplished X, Y, and Z. And I think, again, back to when I go to my nice every day, I go back to my flat with a warm shower, and that I remember them moments when I feel like I've had a hard day. Like people are capable of more than they think, and I think a lot of, especially the young generation now, perhaps are not always getting the opportunity to push themselves and find out where their limits are, because they're usually a lot more further than they think they are. So that's something that I'm quite passionate about, and I'm hoping to use my platform to encourage people to find them limits in a controlled manner, of course, and realize they are capable of more than they think, and it's okay to have like moments like, what am I doing in my life? And I'm feeling pretty bad, but knowing that passes if you just keep pushing forward. And like I say, I think people's limits are far greater than they perceive they are, and it's only in moments sometimes you're forced to find them, and the military makes you find them. But I think you can do that in all walks of life. I found that even in physical training, when I signed up for an Ironman outside of the military, and I found it in them moments as well. So you don't have to join the army to experience this.
I think going back to what you were saying there about the team and the working with other people has pros and cons associated with it. And this is from a layperson's perspective or a psychological perspective looking in. The pros being, actually, you're behaving in a way that is far more natural to humans. We are meant to pull together, to lean on each other, to work together. We're not individuals in the sense that we are as individualistic as culture encourages us to be. Absolutely. That doesn't mean we're not unique and special.
Yes.
But then leaving the military, which I appreciate you haven't done, but when you're looking at veterans who have perhaps been more directionless when they join from, I can think of one person I know who left home at 16, joined the Navy. He hasn't spoken to his parents since then. And he had a really tough upbringing. But then you take someone out of that environment, and suddenly you're in a culture that is individualistic and doesn't necessarily pull together and work as one in the same way. Do you see that happening with people? Because I know that you although you're in the military, you have, for example, your partner isn't in the military, and so you see both sides of the coin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think many people struggle, and that's why there's so many charities for ex-service people, because it is a huge transition, especially when you join at such a young age. At the time, at 18, or 16, you feel like you're an adult and you know everything, and you really don't. And it can be challenging leaving, even when people have left and they really felt it was the right time for them. They've still struggled in that transition. But I think what I've tried to do is, in my downtime, is actually do a lot of things outside the military. So I did my Ironman, I do a lot of hobbies, and I meet up with people outside the military. And that has been quite deliberate over the years. And I think that's just to sort of get the best of both worlds. So like you say, you get that, you see the teamwork and you get all the benefits of the military, but then also you're creating a bit of identity outside of your job. And I think that's important for everyone, because we spend so much time at work, and it makes up so much part of our day. And I think having friends and hobbies and interests outside of work is actually really good for us. And I think especially if I'm hugely a big believer in, you should constantly be working towards something that makes you feel really uncomfortable and challenging. And I think there's nothing wrong with maybe having a job which you find very easy and you don't really want to push yourself, but maybe outside of that, of your job, explore, that's where, seek a bit of stress, seek pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And that can be in anything. That can be from knitting and, setting up a little business and selling that knitwear, or a physical challenge, or anything it may be. And I think then you sort of can take the positives from everything that you're doing. So you see the positives of your workplace and the people within it, take a bit of that, and then your hobby, take a bit of that, and before you know it, you can build yourself a sort of a person who's not individualistic, but also part of a group. So you kind of, do you see what I mean? And then you become quite multifaceted in your character, and you can adapt to lots of different situations, that you find yourself in.
Which we know is really beneficial to mental health and well-being.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And so I've talked to you about this as well in our passionate agreement on some things. That there's the Luckner model of, basically it was built on physical activity and outdoor pursuits of the comfort zone, the stretch zone, and the injury zone.
Yeah.
And I personally believe as well, it's really important to move into your stretch zone.
Yes.
One of the things I find that people sometimes struggle with is knowing what's a good stretch versus a bad stretch.
Yeah.
And where that stretch zone ends and moves into the injury zone, which is negative, where it doesn't. What are your thoughts on that? What have you seen in that respect?
So I would say usually it's probably people not having moments of reflection and seeing where they are. And I think it's good that, and this is different. So you go in your stretch zone, so it's really important that not staying there too long or lack of support when you're in that zone. So I think it's making sure when you go in the stretch zone, there's things around you that are supporting that. So the military is really good at giving people welfare, because they know that if something's not correct in your family life, for instance, like how can they put you, for instance, in an operational environment where it's hugely stressful if things around them aren't going that well? So they're in their stretch zone, but lots of things are, distracting them when they're in there, and they know a soldier can't maintain, well, not some may, but a lot couldn't maintain being in that zone. So that's one thing, like support, and also good mentors and around there. Also good nutrition is a massive thing, and also if you're in a stretch zone doing something mentally, making sure you get physical exercise and vice versa. And so there's that. So it's keeping I think sort of yourself, your well-being, and everyone around you's well-being, like good when you're in that zone. And then also periods of rest. You don't want to be in there too long, but you find that the more you go in that zone, the longer you can sustain being in that zone, because you get used to it and you get a toolkit to know, okay, if I do this, that, and this, and that might be a meditation, a walk, to reset yourself when you're in that zone, you can find that you can, withstand a lot more. And that's sort of, if you think about a point of resilience, a set point, that keeps going up the more you go in that zone. So that's what my advice would be. And also just don't be afraid to get there and stay there, because sometimes it doesn't take a lot to get yourself out there and resting, just a day at home with your feet up or something like that, and you quickly recover. People are so afraid of being burnt out on that, but a lot of the time it won't take much to recharge the batteries, so we say, both mentally and physically. So don't be afraid of exploring where that is. Like I say, it's usually a lot. You can sustain a lot more than you think.
I think that's a great answer. And I mean, one thing I would add to that is looking at whether what you're doing aligns with your values or not.
100%.
Because I think if someone's in a job, say they're in banking, and actually banking does not align with their values, but they think it's the right thing to do because it's a well-paid job.
Yes.
But that puts them in greater danger of burnout than if they were in a job where they were working even harder, but it aligned more with their values, because then it's working towards something that makes sense to them, that matters to them.
100%. And that's why I'm a huge fan of people exploring that zone within their hobbies, because it fits with their values and their interests. And what you'll find is that you, like, for instance, I went on Challenge Sophie. She has this cycling event where you cycle to Paris in 24 hours. And there is something about when I went to work after returning from doing that, where you find you're just more resilient in the workplace, because you've really gone and pushed yourself to a zone in your own time, doing something that fits with your values and your interests, and you build that resilience. Like, say, I think so many people fixate they've got to do this within their work profession, but I'm a massive believer if you do it in a hobby of yours, before you know it, that kind of is developing you within your work persona. And then you also might get the confidence, because you're doing all this amazing stuff outside. Oh, actually, I could go for a different job, or I can pivot, or maybe I can go and get a promotion elsewhere, or stay, or apply for a promotion in my job that I'm currently doing. So yeah, that's what I would highly say. If someone feels that I don't want to do it within my profession, then perhaps find a way of doing it in something that grabs your interest outside. Like I say, it doesn't have to, mine happens to be physical fitness, but it could be anything: cooking, baking, book club, anything.
I think it's spot on. I think it's so true. And the thing that it becomes a virtuous circle as opposed to a vicious cycle. And you see people, I've seen people a lot over the years who are in jobs that are not right for them. And what that tends to do is undermine self-esteem,
100%.
undermine self-efficacy, feelings of self-worth. So it's difficult then to see that it's the environment and the job that's not right. You start thinking it's you that's not right.
Yeah.
Which becomes really negative to other aspects of your life. So if you can do what you're suggesting, even if you're in that position, is take a bit more time to do the things that really give you emotional energy because you enjoy them outside. It starts to build up that confidence again, and it enables you to get that sense of perspective to be able to say, maybe it's not me, maybe it is the environment. And also that sense of self-efficacy and confidence, which says, I can do something about this.
100%. And I think as well, what I'll add to that is sometimes when we come back from if something in our life is making us feel very tired and fatigued, and we feel that we don't have the time and energy to maybe do what we're recommending, is I would say that, try and push past that voice in your head saying, I haven't got time and energy. And even if and just do it anyway. And you'll find that when you just 15 minutes of doing that, you'll get into it, and then you'll do it, and then you'll feel really good. And even though in that moment you felt really tired, you'll feel energized because you've done something that you've enjoyed. And then you'll even feel, again, your self-esteem will be so much higher because you're like, oh, I didn't feel that I could, I don't know, for instance, post on my Instagram about my knitting business, and I felt really tired, but I did it, and now I feel really good, and actually I am capable of more. And then maybe someone clicked on your website link and, oh my god, it's working, and again that just builds that self-esteem. And then when you go into work, I feel that really does translate over, and you'll go into work with better self-esteem. And it's sort of it's just catching yourself in the moments when you spiral down, and sort of trying to get that spiral back up, or and keeping yourself balanced, because I am actually someone who can spiral quite easily in my head and my thoughts, and I've over the years got my mechanisms to keep me balanced, and one of them is doing challenging things outside of work. Sometimes that coincides, and for me that's physical fitness, but like I say, find whatever yours is, and I find that just really keeps me balanced. So and
it's remembering them, isn't it? I think even as a psychologist, like, supposedly I should be like the most high functioning person in the world, which I clearly am not. But I have a lot of techniques and approaches that do work, but you tend to forget when you're under pressure. And so it's almost just cataloging them or telling someone you care about to remind you when you're under pressure that that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, and again, that's that support network when you're in these zones, to people to also catch you and support you in their moments. But also another thing, what I'll say is, I think that's so lost, that I am very guilty of, is we love reading stuff online, all these tips and what we should be doing, and it sounds great. And in the moment, we get like a dopamine hit, so we feel really good, like, yes, I'm going to do that tomorrow. But we never put it in action. And I think, these days it's so easy to swipe through social media, TikTok, save things we like, but do we actually ever do what is recommended? So I'd say, when you listen to podcasts or you read books, just remember to action. And again, I think the best way to action what they're saying is doing it outside of an environment, for instance, your job, where a lot's on the line, your job, your reputation, you don't want to lose your job. Do it in something outside, because if you muck up or it doesn't go quite to plan when you're trying out these new things, it doesn't really matter. No one needs to know. It's not going to affect your job and your income, etc., etc. So yeah, just I'm massive on action, because I think we talk a lot these days, and like you said, sometimes you have to remember to catch yourself. But the more you do this stuff, the more it will become habitual. But yeah, we have to action, and to sort of get things becoming natural. And building them tolerances or them skills.
I think that's another piece of great advice. And I'm keen, before we run out of time, to talk about some of the topics that you're passionate about. So I've got some here. The fallacy of happily ever afters. Say no to chocolate. There is no pleasure without pain.
Yeah.
Take a leap of faith when feeling limbic friction. And to put a bit of context around that, there's a lot of thought behind these things. You've reflected, you've considered. Tell us a bit about where it's come from and coming from for you.
Yeah, so I'm someone who likes to reflect a lot on the past, which can be a negative, but I try and use it as a positive of thinking, why did things go right and why did things go wrong in any scenario, and know the reasons why that's happened. And I like to read a lot and listen to a lot of podcasts to find out the science behind it. I'm someone who gets incredible amount of comfort from science. It usually explains a lot and also makes you feel not alone, because you realize it's just the human nature. So just a quick side note, I highly recommend Andrew Huberman. He's one of few people I listen to, and he's phenomenal at doing that. So just if people go and check them out. Just quickly, so the fallacy of happily ever afters, I think, as a woman and someone who's grown up watching Disney films, is that, as much as I love Disney, as you can see, real life princes and princesses are not always happy, as we've seen, and over the course of history, and quite apparent today. And I think that's because it's impossible to be happy all the time. I think actually what makes us happy is pursuing something meaningful, and also that I realized I researched recently, that basically there's no pleasure about pain. So I highly recommend a book called Dopamine Nation: Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence by Dr. Anna Lempke. And I'll let you read the book for all the scientific sort of information, but what she's saying is pleasure and pain are like a seesaw, and they're in the same part of the brain. And every time you do something pleasurable, the seesaw goes up, but then what must go up must come down. And so it's really important to realize that. So basically, you're never going to be always happy, and trying to keep yourself balanced as much as possible. And that, there's always something to work on as well. So there's never a happily ever after. There's never, once I get my partner, my house, my kids, or whatever it is you're aspiring for, you're not just going to be happy. It's a constant journey. And you take your mind everywhere with you. So learning how to have your toolkits to deal with yourself and your personality is really important. So that's that, and that also goes into the say no to chocolate. There's no pleasure without pain. I think, again, as a woman who used to eat a lot of chocolate, that's one thing to realize. That in moments where we may be craving it, it's just because we want to numb ourselves of a discomfort feeling. and actually we make it worse when we go to the chocolate. So, and what else was it that you
I mean, there were lots of things I want to hear about, and I think overall it's, I mean, let's jump to another one which I know we've talked about before. There is nothing more dangerous than a bored woman.
Yeah, and I say this in tongue in cheek, and I'm also saying this from personal experience, that, you know, I know that I'm highly neurotic. I actually did a personality test, and I read your book as well, and I realised...
Well, I hope my book didn't tell you you're neurotic. I wouldn't use that word, Hannah.
Oh, okay. But but I sort of can be quite anxious and stuff like that, and I realised that the moments is very emphasised. If I'm not got anything meaningful to think about, you know, I might create stories and just not be easy to get on with. But in moments when I'm really busy and I've got something meaningful in my life or a meaningful challenge, it really sort of focuses me, and you find the white noise of life just goes and you don't get upset with the little things. And I've also noticed that in other people, and obviously I'm a woman, so probably I've noticed it more in women. You know, I'm sure men can be the same, but I say it from a woman's perspective. That's where it comes from. And I just think that people are happiest when, not necessarily when they're just happy all the time and they're on a beach with a cocktail, but actually they're pursuing something quite challenging but meaningful. And so, like I say, I'm a big believer that everyone should find what that is. It doesn't have to be their careers or, you know, just anything. And I think people are a lot happier, and it keeps you on a good path and doing daily habits that are good for you instead of maybe negative. So, and
as Viktor Frankl famously said, it's observed when he was in concentration camps that it was the people who had sense of meaning and purpose who were more likely to survive.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's quite a stark piece of evidence. And then on top of that, someone who more recently studied that a lot is Todd Kashdan, who has been on the podcast. He's wonderful. And he talks about meaning in life and has done a lot of research on the impact it has on well-being. But it can be hard to find what that meaning is and what that purpose is. And I think the approach that you're suggesting taking is brilliant because it's curious. It's a journey. It's not a destination.
Absolutely. And I think one thing, I'm quite an open person, which is definitely well, because I've always just thrown myself into things or volunteered, or like I went outside the military, I went traveling in Australia, and you just try lots of different things. And I always try, and it didn't really matter if I didn't have anyone to do it with, or there wasn't other women to do it with. I just sort of did it. And I think that's, and then in them moments you find what you like and what you dislike. So for instance, I can tell you very much so that I don't like jumping out of planes. I did a parachute. I did not like that. I did not pursue that. But then there's other things I found out that I love, like weightlifting, and things like that. But you have to try these things, but not just like try them once. I mean, parachute I just tried once, but maybe if I actually do say that, but I think if I kept doing it, I might come to enjoy it, because sometimes I used to hate weightlifting. I used to hate the gym. I actually used to take the mickey out of weightlifters, and ironically I've turned into one. So sometimes it's also just even if something doesn't feel great at first, like keep doing it. And I
think that's interesting because you're showing an open-mindedness as well, because you're not staying too fixated on an opinion that you've had.
No,
about yourself and about other people.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important, because I think sometimes we try things and they feel really, really uncomfortable, and then we're like, oh, it's not for us. It's like, no, it might be for you. You just need to keep going it. And again, I won't go into the nitty-gritty of it, but if you listen to Andrew Huberman, he will actually explain that. And I'll let people go and do that research, because
I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, because he explains all of that, and it's basically that your neural pathway has to create new pathways, and it's really uncomfortable to do that, and your body wants to stay in homeostasis. It doesn't want to change. So even if something positive, it's also why when people are addicted, even though they know it's really good for them to stop alcoholism, I know it's very complex, but a part of that is because your body doesn't want to change, even if it's changing for the good. Again, it's just keep trying these things. And like I say, I think if I did parachuting enough, even though I I didn't like it. I think if I kept doing it enough, I know that eventually I probably would like it. It's just I'm choosing not to keep pursuing that. But yeah, so
I think there's definitely a level of curiosity that's required, because it's a very nuanced fine line between keep trying and it really isn't right for us.
Yeah.
Or keep trying and knowing when actually we're going to sort of jump over that bit that says this is uncomfortable to this is enjoyable.
Yeah. And I think it's researching, like knowing why you're doing what you're doing. So for instance, if it's like a health change, I think it's up to individuals to research why it's good for them, not just a quick conversation with your GP, but really know it. Because in their moments where you're like eating your broccoli, you're like, oh, what am I doing with my life? You know why you're doing it, because maybe it's having this positive effect, but really understanding it and feeling why it is that you're doing it. And I think that will sort of make you push past that discomfort. And I think a perfect example leading to the military of that is, the absolutely phenomenal people who lived through the world wars, who were in the trenches or in the various uncomfortable environments. They really believed in what they were doing, both sides, and therefore they were able to stick past discomfort and keep pushing forward, literally into gunfire and the rest of it. So I think that's a perfect example of when really people believe in something, what they'll do, both positive and negative, as we know. So again, bring it back to a more somber point. If it's eating broccoli, really understand why it is, that you're doing, why you're doing.
And I also think the thing that you've referred to earlier, and I think is so important, and it comes back to our individualistic, the way we're encouraged to be quite individualistic, but in reality, we need other people. We need to depend on other people, and we need to allow other people to help us understand ourselves.
Absolutely, that bird's eye view, isn't it? And I think that's why therapy has been is becoming more popular, because it gives people that access to someone to give them a bird's eye view in a very objective way. Because sometimes it's really hard to be objective when we're feeling really subjective. So yeah, whatever it may be, going into visiting religious leaders or therapy or a friend or anything, I think just having someone to give you that bird's eye view is really important. And like you say, even if you were being open and maybe it's time to call it a day and that's not for you, that someone can give you that advice. And just make sure that person that is giving you that advice you trust as well, because not everybody's perfect for that role, should we say.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, knowing all these different things, I think, and social media makes it worse. We have an expectation that there's one way or another way, but when it comes to our minds, our behavior, even our physical way of operating, there's so many different nuances.
For sure. And I think that's what I loved about your book, Mirror Thinking, was realizing how much others impact us, both positively and negative. And it's really important to make sure that if we know that someone's getting that bird's eye view, and maybe, because we can't always avoid being around maybe some people, and some people good at some things and bad at others, and knowing when moments to distance yourself and not mirror people. And that's you sometimes to mirror people. And one thing, just to go back at you a little bit, that I read something the other day that's saying in the age of social media where we can be led astray, that it's actually, instead of putting the emphasis so much on social media platforms, actually putting the emphasis to put people in the right direction within our communities and ourselves. I was wondering what you were thinking about that actually maybe to solve this really complex problem of the internet and what's on there is actually empowering people to sort of guide our friends and family and ourselves in the right way, and bringing that sort of emphasis back onto people and small communities. I was wondering what you thought about.
Yeah, well, obviously I've got an app that does that really well. But in all seriousness, I totally agree. I think it's about leaning back into where we thrive naturally, which is the sort of environment. It doesn't mean everyone has to run with a burden on the back through pouring rain and not have any sleep. But I think it is really important that we realise it's okay to depend on other people and to be interconnected with other people. It doesn't mean we lose our individuality, and it doesn't mean we're weak. It actually makes us far stronger, far far more fulfilled. But it is a complex environment, even offline, trying to read and understand and navigate people. What I personally love about it there's two things. One is the fact that it's ever evolving, and it's so interesting being a human around other humans and trying to understand ourselves and them and how we interact and what that means. Obviously, I'm going to say that because that's my job. But the other thing, coming back to you, is this continual personal development. And I think it can sound like something that's really daunting because you're like, I'm never going to get there. Or it can sound like something and be something that's immensely fulfilling. Because if you approach it in the way you do, which is exploring, being curious, trying things out, pushing your boundaries, testing things, coming back again, knowing when sometimes things do go wrong, and having that level of self-awareness that you have, where you can say, yeah, I do spiral, and being open about that also obviously allows other people, gives people permission to an extent to be able to help you. And I think that whole message that you're giving and the way that you're giving it is fantastic. And you know that I want to continue. This isn't, I mean, outside of this podcast, this is the continual relationship. But I think you've got so much to give and so much to communicate, which is immensely helpful. And so I'm really excited to see where it goes.
And I've been thinking recently how I would love to work with sort of more the younger generation and children, and especially from underprivileged backgrounds, and sort of give them the support and opportunities that I've had to have this, to explore and be curious, and also just to get away from the white noise. Because one of my most fondest memories is when I went in a hill walking package through the military in Scotland, and it was a map and compass, and it was just some soggy sandwiches in my backpack, and we just went off the beaten track, and no phone signal, nothing, and it is the most therapeutic thing you will ever do. And it was, at times I was cold, wet and hungry, but it was just something. And I've said to you before, actually, one of the things when I was deployed on operations is, I had what I call my house in order before I went, so all my affairs were taken care of. And I went out there, and you don't have your phone, you have limited access to the internet, and you have limited access to a phone, and it gives you this clarity in your head. And every day you're not drinking alcohol, you're having your 3 square meals. Again, this is my personal experience, and you're exercising every day. And I worked 7 days a week for 5 months on end. And I was able to maintain that with a lot of clarity. I did get a bit mentally fatigued towards the end, but nothing serious. And it just goes to show, when sometimes we have these things in place, that how much we can keep going when we take away distractions and we look after our body. And it can actually, even though, you're saying to someone now, work 7 days a week for 5 months, and like, what? But we could do that. And a lot of that is also being incredibly physically fit before we went out, because even though my job wasn't physical, I think that physical fitness allowed that energy came through. So that's what I'd love to sort of where I'm going with this is give that to young people, make them sort of see that sometimes just putting your phone down and get it's very cliche, and getting out in nature, and sort of, even if it is being a bit cold, like how therapeutic it can be. It doesn't have to be a spa weekend. And
I think it isn't cliche, because I think you put it within the context of what it means. It's not just a go and take a walk or put your phone down. You're saying it with an explanation of why that's helpful and the context of why that's helpful, which I think is the difference between it being, as one of my guests once said, something you'd see posted on a cushion and put on Instagram as something that actually means something. I'm hoping that we'll have another podcast conversation at some point. Absolutely. I know people are going to be really happy to hear this interview. We're going to put all your social handles in the notes. If people want to speak to Hannah, I'm assuming they can reach out, or you can do it through me.
Absolutely, reach out.
And there's also, although you're in the military, you're still available for doing things like speaking and communicating these messages. So if there are business people, for example, listening, and they wanted to bring you in?
Absolutely. Or even, individuals just reach out. I'm always happy to talk to people from all walks of life, and have a chat. No strings attached. I just want to help people and sort of share the experiences I had. And like I said to you, my platform I'm trying to do is just talking to my younger self and knowing that I'm not special, everything. I feel like if I could chat to my younger self, then maybe that will help other people. Because I don't feel my ups and downs are unique, and my toolkits are unique to deal with that. And so I therefore hope, it can help other people and give them confidence, especially women, because what I'll say is, what I found is women can be sometimes a bit more anxious to go forward to hard challenges. It's in our genetic makeup that makes us amazing mothers. So it's not a critique. It's just one of the things that's great in certain situations and bad in others. Like maybe we're less open to putting ourselves in unique circumstances. If we don't feel that there's other people around us that are doing it. And reach out, and I can give my experiences of overcoming that, because it hasn't always been easy to chuck myself into situations. And I
will add, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but Hannah's very attractive as well. And I think that's quite an interesting one for being in such a masculine and high threat environment.
Yeah. And again, that's that thing where I'm happy to jump into my uniform and scrape my hair back. And essentially I could, if you see me full-fledged exercise uniform with cam cream on, hair back, everything on, I could easily be a boy. But that's where that's fine, because I fit into the team there. I'm there to do a job, and that's where you can, what I'm saying, the person you can be outside of work. So me, whereas I wear heels, I have my hair down, I like my girly stuff, and you can be lots of different people. And I don't think it's a bad thing that I have my military head, and then also my different ways I sort of
express myself
in certain different situations in the military. So when I'm a ski instructor versus when I'm out in the field doing training versus in the office day to day. And again, outside of work, you can enjoy being, no makeup out in the open, hair everywhere, and actually also enjoy going to the beauticians and putting your heels on. You don't have to be fixated as a particular type of person. You can put lots of faces on, and the more that you open yourself up to lots of different experiences, and then you learn how to adapt. It's not being fake. It's just you can be different people, just like you're a psychologist, you're a mum, you're a wife, you're etc., a tennis player, etc. So
I think that's fantastic. And I love your messages. I'm going to pull out some of them and play them back to you as well, to sort of highlight your wisdom.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that is just beautiful is talking to your younger self. And I think thinking of that as a way of conveying information is something that is really helpful for a lot of people to think about, actually.
Yeah, I think it is massively helpful, because then you can then look back in the past, and instead of feeling like a victim, and you might have been a victim, some people are, by sort of processing that and thinking, what could I have done different to maybe change the outcome or make things that bit better. And it's not blaming yourself, it's just like moving forward. If this happens again, I know now that direction of what happened could be very different, and that's very empowering. That's not victim blaming or blaming yourself. That's just, oh, okay, if something like this happens again, both positive, if it was positive, you go, oh, I know I need to go with that. If it wasn't so great, oh, okay, I'll change it. And that's part of growing, and the only way that we can move forward and become better is putting ourselves in challenging situations, going with it, reflecting on it, resting, and repeat.
And I think there's just using another wording that you've used, is that you have a challenging but empathic message. And I think that's important when thinking back to our younger selves as well, is being empathic to that younger version who maybe did get things wrong, and giving ourselves that reassurance that perhaps our younger self didn't get from other people at that time. And it provides that opportunity to do that, which I'm learning at the moment through more recent research is so immensely powerful. So it all fits together. Now, I could keep talking to you
Yes.
all day, but I know that you're in the military and we've already gone over by 5 minutes, and that's a bad thing.
Oh, I have to be 5 minutes before in the military.
And so I'm going to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
As I said, all of your information is going to be in the show notes for people that want to get in contact with you, and I'll make sure I've got the names of those 2 people that you referred to, and I'll put that in the show notes as well.
I highly recommend, and you'll learn a lot if you take the time, and they put things very beautifully, and they're very well educated. So I'd say, you'll be put on the right path following them. Let's put it that way.
Amazing. Well, I'm all for evidence-based science stuff. So, as I said, I could carry on talking. I'm going to stop because otherwise I'll keep eking it out. And just say massive thank you, Hannah.
Thank you to you. Yeah, and I love your books. So thank you.
Thanks to my guests. Thanks to you for listening. If you want to find out more about me and my work, go to fionamerden.com, or my social media handle is also Fiona Merden. If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe, review and tell your friends. It'd be a massive help. But for now, goodbye, and I hope you have a great week.